Hi folks, thanks for watching. I'd like to take a look at Cliffjumper. As I've said before, at first I avoided movie bots, but as I got used to customizing, I thought it would be a good idea to grab some movie bots and try to make them look a little more like their G1 characters. This guy was something that kind of caught my eye because at the time he was maybe half the price of grabbing a Cliffjumper that was made by Hasbro, and the other difference was that he looked a little bit different because of his paint applications, and he had a new head sculpt. I was really on the fence about the head sculpt at the time because it looked nothing like a movie bot. But I decided to pick him up anyways, and I found that his plastic quality was definitely equal to Hasbro, which is really nice. Then I decided that I could custom his head sculpt. Now, I don't know if I was 100% successful. I guess you could be the judge of that. It's kind of a unique look, but I think all the movie bots have a unique look. I think it was worthwhile. He's worth putting on my shelf. Whether he's perfect or not, I'll let you be the judge. But in grabbing him, I also learned a little bit about the company. It's definitely, in my mind, a knockoff because it is the exact same mold, exact same transformation. It's just a bit of a surprise, and some people have called it third party because you have the quality of plastic and you have a new head sculpt, so it feels like it might be a third party, but it really just couldn't be. It's a knockoff because everything else is ripped off, even the little shoulder pads that seem to come off very easily are true on this figure, which can easily be glued down, which I might do. And another redeeming quality of the Hasbro is getting this gun out of his hand. I hope I don't pull his hand off, but I have done it before. But wow, does it take some force to get that off, and there goes the hand. So I might pause for a bit to try to get this hand off, and I'll come back. So I got that hand freed from the weapon. So this is the weapon here. It's the exact same weapon that Bumblebee had for this mold. There may be differences in color and in the clear plastic. The clear plastic, you'll see when you open it up, it is geared into a knife. Those gears pull it up and down, so it's a fairly successful weapon in that sense. It's just really tough to remove and install in this figure, so I am very reluctant to use it whenever I transform this bot. It does store in vehicle mode, which I'll show you in a bit, but for now we're just going to put this aside and forget about him. I will take a little look at the differences. Obviously, the main differences are that you don't have any striping on his hood, and I do transform him differently, also to give a different effect from the Bumblebee of this time. I leave these gauntlets down. I also leave the wings down, where usually B would have those up, just to give him a different look. Obviously, the head sculpt is a different look that I've added some plastic and carved just to give them, a more movie-ish look, where the head sculpt that came with this figure, which you'll see in the lead-up shots, is very G1, but also very awkward. So I've changed that a little bit just to try to get it in the wheelhouse that I believe it should be. Before I do anything else, I'll show you a little bit of comparisons just for size, in case you don't have a figure near this size. Here's Minicon Buckshot, one of my favorite Minicons. He is, I believe, the third repaint from Armada Fire Blast, I think it was. It was a little fire truck. But he is one of my favorite minicons. Let's get him out of there. And you know what's going to happen. You know a comparison with Bumblebee is going to happen. It's got to happen. So there he is with the Evasion Mode Bumblebee. This is the Takara version. You'll notice that by some of the black paints on him that make him look a little different. And you'll notice that Clifjumper's taller than him. And one of the fun things about this mold is if you want to adjust his height, the Automorph actually gives you that opportunity. You could simply squat him down. You can make him a tiny little guy because of that Automorph if you wanted to. So who's taller, Bumblebee or Cliffjumper? You tell me, because either one could be. And that's just what's fun about these darn Transformers, right? Let's get rid of our Bumblebee and maybe make Cliffjumper back to his normal height. Somewhere around there. So that's a fun little feature. And let's compare him with a big bot. I've got Robots in Disguise Landfill here. Just because I want to show him off. I love this big bot. And you cannot see him. So let's get this camera up. There is Landfill with Cliffjumper. He's also known as Build King, which I wish the North American version would have called him Build King. I think that's just a nicer name all around. Hopefully one day, if these videos do well, I will take the time to review him and his pieces, because you don't get too many Autobot combiners as unique as that fellow. Let's get rid of him. Let's talk just for a moment about Articulation. The new head sculpt is a little bit hindered. You don't get much down. You get up, but it is on a ball joint. And you get a full 360 if you need it. So you can move around there. His shoulders are a unique beast, if you will. He does have a 360. There's those shoulder pads that pop off, just like on the original mold. No difference here. Those can be glued down, but I think I enjoy the pop off. Just shows how much like the Hasbro mold it is. But you do have a 360 on this ball joint. But there's collision issues all through this figure. His chest pads move. If you like them down, I've known some people will keep their Clifjumpers down just to, again, make more of a difference from the Bumblebee. He has the bicep swivel, an elbow joint that bends 90 degrees. And he does have ball joints on the wrist that will pop out if you put his weapon in his hand, as you've seen. He does have waist articulation. Well, it's basically ab articulation. Again, hindered by what it's going to run into. So, I don't know how valid that is. If you really work at it, you could spin this whole waist section around, but it is not needed for transformation. The tilt might be used in transformation. And then you have ball joints at his hips. You have bends at the knees, and again, only so far because of collision issues. And you have an ankle articulation that does move back and forth really well. You have toes that will slightly move. There's not much of an angle willing there because it will collide with that joint there. And your heel spurs move a bit, but they actually never touch the ground. They're more so just for aesthetics and how it looks when you transform them. So let's take a little look at his transformation. Right off the bat, I turn his head around just to avoid the VHS when he's in his vehicle mode. And honestly, you can get rid of these legs right off the bat. Just like I showed you, you could transform him even while he's standing up. When it comes to the legs, all you do really is grab the top of the trunk and push the toes in, and it basically automorphs. And then you click down this little fender section. Let's repeat that. Grab it, push it down, click in the fender section, and it's done there. And just for fun, let's clip together a whole back trunk right now. You can save that for later, but it's worthwhile to just get it out of the way. Now, we've got to move this chest section up, and it's technically an automorph, but you bump into scenarios as you do it where you're basically straightening things out and continuing the automorph, so this might seem a little annoying. It's just honestly just not the perfect little transformation that you would have liked. But basically you start pulling up the chest, straighten things out, continue pulling up the chest, you know, just trying to make sure everything's clear as you do it. And I guess that's supposed to be an automorph. But again, this is 2007. It's amazing how the engineering has changed since 2007. But you're just basically finicking with everything to make sure you're not getting things in the way as you pull this chest or bumper up. And if you have gotten it up to the point where it could click in there, you were successful. Good job. Pat on the back for anybody who could do that. And I know it just seems like a mess, but I wish I could show you a better way, but that's the way. Now, when it comes to the arms, I simply put the hood over the hands and turn the hands down. I find it just leaves a touch more space than if you don't orient the hands. So again, just put the hands facing away from the hood. And because you've got that, you can start orienting those arms, and all you're really doing is bringing them in to the center of the car. I guess it is a car at this point. And you peg them together. This is a feature that was removed in future versions of Bumblebee, which basically this is a mold of, and I can understand why. It's quite finicky. It feels like you're going to rip these tabs on the windscreen off, but basically you're trying to bend him, and I think that's what that waist articulation is for, simply so you could tab these two together. And as you can see, there's basically, you know, the opposing tabs. Once you get them together, the rest really just does the work. So now that I've got those together, everything else becomes a lot more simple. So I send these little hooks back, these little tabs click in just behind the rear windscreen there. You just fold the body back and it grabs there. And then you got to take care of these little arms. Sorry, the things are coming untabbed there. But these little arms, all you're really doing is shifting these panels down. And you can see why I turned his head around, otherwise he'd be staring right at you, if you want to see. Don't need none of that. But basically you bring these doors in now that you have folded down, and this whole section is on sliders right in there that will slide in, and seal up everything else. It kind of holds the whole bot together when you do complete that section. Now my main gripe with this vehicle mode, and I think why they were adamant in changing it for the Revenge of the Fallen mode, is these curves in the door panels really make it look like you broke something. But all said and done, it does look like, you know, the concept Camaro of the time. I guess it was a 2007 concept Camaro. So as far as that's concerned, they were successful. And here's where we add in that gun. Now, I've seen some people put it in as they transform. I find it just falls out. I don't know if it's just the difference between this knockoff and the original version. But I basically transform him, and then now I add it in. And all you do is you take the blaster point, you put it in below his waist section, spread just enough to line up his pegs here, because these pegs are not clean or solid. They're basically loose, but they do fit into those, and you can see there's some movement on it even when they're in those peg holes. But it does hold there and doesn't interfere with anything under the car. The only thing really interfering under the car is these big feet. But that's your Clifjumper right there. Now you can see that they did a decent paint job. I'm surprised they got away with it. They have the Chevy symbol on the front. They've got the Chevy symbol on the back. In fact, I believe this is more paint than you even saw on the Bumblebee at the time. And it is a slightly lighter windscreen. I think that's the main annoyance I have. I think that slightly darker. I know a lot of people like the blue windscreens. I think that they should go with dark gray on almost every windscreen. Ever since I saw the smoke screen on my last review, I just thought, why not go with the dark gray? It just looks more realistic and looks cleaner. But this is that bot all transformed up. Let's have a look at some comparisons. Let's do a smaller figure. We have a Scout Cybertron overhaul right here. He's a good looking little bot. He's terrible for articulation, so I guess a little bit like this guy, like Cliffjumper. And obviously, for doing Cliffjumper, like I said before, we gotta do Bumblebee. Now Bumblebee, this is a canon Bumblebee. He's still my favorite. I think he was a Revenge of the Fallen. I actually don't own a Bumblebee. I didn't buy a Bumblebee from the first movie. This was the first and only Bumblebee I had until that Evasion Bumblebee that I showed you. And he's just one of my favorites. I think the paint apps are great. But the main point of bringing him out was the size comparison. The funny thing is, even though his transformation of his upper body is different, his legs are identical to this mold. But his size, as you can see, is very, very similar. So you're getting a good size comparison there of most of your early Bumblebees. The major difference from transformation in the upper body was these arms came down while those arms went up and near the windshield. So that's the main difference between those two. But a nice example of how they are quite similar. Sorry to stutter there, but wow, they look very similar. But again, another attempt for me to make him look different than Bumblebee, because that's just a curse to have him look exactly the same. And last, let's go to something bigger. Here's Alternators Prowl. He's a good looking thing. Now, I don't know what his leg mod is. If anyone knows that leg mod, please post a link or something. I gotta turn his legs around when I transform this guy. He's got those weird looking legs, but he's a real nice looking bot. Otherwise, he's one of my favorite alternators, even though I think he could be better. But that's a little comparison of those two guys. So, that's a quick look at our Cliffjumper here. Again, he's made by the Arkers, or it's called thearker.com. It was the website. He's basically a knockoff, but he's practically third party worthy. If you see him online for anything cheaper than the Hasbro version and you don't mind the head sculpt, please pick him up because he's really not that bad. But he's definitely not perfect, just like any version of this mold is not perfect. I do want a little bit of your help. I don't know what I'm going to review next, so I might get your help on that. I might review one of my customs. I've got some customs I'm working on. They're almost done, just to show you. So these might be next. You can see that this is going to be an Ironhide, but I screwed up the paint on his leg. So I don't know what's going to be next. But if you guys could tell me what I should paint these rims, this is going to be a custom blue streak that I'm working on. He's going to be a movie blue streak. But I have no idea. I've been toiling over what his legs should be painted as. He's got a new head sculpt, so let me know if you think you know what I should paint these rims. I'm thinking silver or red or maybe like a dark gray, like a flat gunmetal gray. That might look cool too. But I just can't decide because he's going to be that. If not, I'm going to do that. But if I don't finish either of these customs, I might just like do something like this, a Vector Prime. I got a neat little Vector Prime in the mail, so I might do something like that. But thanks again for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little look at a car that has never been reviewed on YouTube. That's a huge deal, right? Isn't it? Probably not. So I hope you liked it. Thanks again for watching. Hope to hear from you soon.